So hi everyone, welcome to the beginning of module 4. And we're here with Alissa Perucci, like Alissa Perucci, like loose, like Alissa Gucci. I struggled with the name spelling and the pronunciation of her name, and just remember it's like Gucci. I discovered her work back in 2012 at a National Abortion Federation conference and discovered this book, which I hope you all have now, Decision Assessment and Counseling in Abortion Care, which was published in 2012 and really was the basis for a lot of the training that I had at Blue Mountain Clinic in Missoula, Montana, in years past, and has really informed the way that I continue to counsel today. So thank you so much, Alissa, for working on this project of really working on patient-centered counseling in abortion care for the future.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Lynsey. And I think what you are doing and this amazing group that is here today and that's going to be here in the future, like looking at these recordings, you all are part of a huge, important movement that is the future of abortion counseling. And I am honored to be here. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of everything that you're doing. And I think you have a great leader taking you down this path. And I'm excited, really excited to see where it goes. So thanks so much for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background and also how you came to publish this groundbreaking book?
Well, I have now, let's see, this is the year 2025. We're here spring 2025. And I've been working now as an abortion counselor for officially now more than 20 years. I started working in an abortion clinic in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was finishing my PhD in clinical psychology. And I really didn't know which direction my life was going to go. And this is going to sound strange. You spend all this time, you're getting this PhD. And I'm going to say the truth is I realized I didn't want to work as a clinical psychologist. I really wanted to get the degree that I got. It was very important to me personally and spiritually and emotionally and psychologically. But I wanted to take that knowledge and that learning and that personal transformation and put it in service of something else, but I did not know exactly what that was. And my program was existential phenomenological psychology, which is odd and rare and unusual, and taught only in a couple places in the United States. I was at Duquesne University. And so I was finishing that and I was like, I need another practicum site. I need to get some hours. And I saw an ad in the newspaper for an abortion counselor. And I responded to that ad. I got the job and I ended up working for 3 years as an abortion counselor in this this independent clinic, which was a woman-owned business that had started right at the beginning of Roe in 1973 or thereabouts. And it changed my life. It changed. I instantly knew which way I wanted to go. And that's where I got exposure to the foundations of abortion counseling and just kind of realized, you know what? I had great teachers. My manager was a great teacher. And what at the slide that we're looking at now, there were a bunch of women that were my teachers from afar. This was pre-internet. So it was more challenging to share information, but it still was being shared. And I realized that I wanted to someday, it took a while, but I realized that someday I wanted to write something that people could hold in their hands and use it as their own guide, their own teaching tool, wherever they were in the world, to help them meet patients where they were at and hold space through this process.
How old was abortion counselor Alissa?
Let's see. When I started being an abortion counselor, I was 27. And I worked at Women's Health Services in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from 1997 to 2000. That was my first abortion job. Yeah.
It's a formative experience.
It was totally.
And those were also the early years of this abortion work. And we're skipping ahead of ourselves a little bit, but maybe we should talk about the independent feminist health centers to start with. Maybe that's a more natural place to start.
Yeah, this is the feminist health centers, feminist women's health centers, they were also called in the United States, were a bunch of abortion clinics that were women-owned businesses. They started, right around Roe and after Roe in 1973. And these names here were women that were, like, I consider Terry Beresford, well, my teachers considered Terry Beresford like sort of the grandmother of abortion counseling, and then Ann Baker, Peg Johnson, and Charlotte Taft as the mother. Those were my mothers. And it's funny because it took me a really long time to meet them in person, but it's weird how, I mean, it's just going to sound so silly, but one of them, they would write stuff and they would make documents and they would make triage forms. And then I think clinics would just fax it to each other, and we'd get these strange Mimeo, it used to look purple and weird and all tacky, but that they would sort of send them to each other. And I guess in 97 was as people started using some forms of email, but people passed around information, and my boss got a hold of it, and I, not even knowing them yet, I was being trained in their methods. And I'm super happy to become knowledgeable of Rachel Dyer, and just I took spent some time at her website, and she is doing some incredible work as a psychologist, and that is exactly what we need. She is taking this work in a completely new direction that I think is going to be life-changing for patients.
Why do you think there's so few people that have really delved deeply into this topic of feminist patient-centered counseling for abortion?
Gosh, well, I think for one, this is tough. So in the beginning with Roe, with the Jane Collective, sorry, let me rephrase that. Before Roe, when there was abortion in the United States, there was a good amount of clandestine abortion in the United States, even though it was illegal. The Jane Collective was a group of women in Chicago who were the first. I mean, I'm sure they're in recorded history or modern history say they were the first abortion counselors, and they were part of a movement that moved women to get their illegal abortions in Chicago, but they believed in counseling and doing counseling beforehand in terms of letting women know. The concept was, if you go way back in time in medicine, doctors held all of the knowledge. Patients were allowed to have almost zero of the knowledge, right? And if you go back in time and you talk to people who, part of your family who were part of history, and they will tell you about how, like, if we would have gotten a diagnosis of cancer back in the old days, the doctors usually advised that we not be told that we had cancer, right? And so the family would be told, oh, your mom has cancer. They wouldn't tell your mom or your dad. They just felt like that wasn't really helpful to patients. And so these particular women who started the Jane Collective, they believed in the sharing of medical knowledge. And that was the principle, the philosophy that grounded their work. And there are a lot of reasons, that really took hold, but then it kind of disappeared again. It's slowly been disappearing from the work of abortion.
Mm-hmm. So what was your experience of working within the independent feminist health centers at that time, and being part of the development and evolution of patient-centered counseling within the walls at that time?
I was so lucky that I had the manager that I had. I was just telling my team the other day, her name was Debbie, and I wrote about her in the preface. She Debbie I always felt like Debbie thought I knew what I was doing more than I did. I always used to tell her, like, Debbie, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And she's like, no, you do know what you're doing. I trust you. But it was really hard. And I'm a person who needs, part of why I wrote the book was that it was what I needed. I needed, a lot of guides. I needed a lot of mnemonics. I need shortcuts. I used to carry around a clipboard with all the different, this is how the birth control method works. This is how these are the steps to doing judicial bypass. There was just so much I felt like I was holding in my head, and I kept a lot of it on a clipboard. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I didn't want to forget anything. I loved my clinic. It was so great. And it was great to be independent in the sense of, it was somebody's family business. And so that gives the clinic a ton of freedom in terms of how it wants to operate. But the downside of that is it doesn't have the protection of like a larger institution, either a university or like an institution such as Planned Parenthood. So if something were to happen, like there's no one to protect it. It's like you own a restaurant or you are a mechanic.
So Alissa, how many independent feminist health clinics used to exist in this time?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's such a good question. We may have to go on the Guttmacher for that. Do you know?
I do.
Oh my God, please tell me.
There was 350 post Roe. I'm pretty sure it's 350 if my memory serves correct. Okay. And now I believe there's like 12 left.
That sounds about right. Wow.
So all of like the soft lamp lighting and no bright overhead, the cozy blankies like home, all of these things, which probably don't exist as much in a Planned Parenthood context.
Yeah, wow, 350 to 12.
And so I'm assuming that's also what happened to your clinic in Pennsylvania.
It did become part of Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I'm the woman who owned it. I don't know the whole story, but at some point she, I guess they offered her, like she was probably at the point where she couldn't, she was ready to transition out of that world. And I don't know how many, I think some of the staff actually stayed. It was an amazing staff. Yeah, but it's just it became a different world. Maybe harder, needing more protections, more this, more that, but then the loss of the things. I think those 350 clinics and the women that own them and were part of NAF and the Abortion Care Network, those are our two professional organizations, at least in the United States, and Mexico and Canada. And now the National Abortion Federation, actually, yes, Mexico, Canada, Central America, and South America, which is incredible, has allies and clinics and physicians and teams that are part of that. But I think that influence from those independent feminist health centers, the influence has permeated both of those professional organizations and all the clinics, including the Planned Parenthoods that are part of that. It has their work. And so that image that you talked about, Lynsey, of that certain style of holding space and of care, that mark has not disappeared. Like the legacy of that has not totally disappeared. But as you and I, Lynsey, have talked about, it's the art and the work and the labor of abortion counseling. That's the part that I believe has shifted quite a bit.
What do you mean by the labor of abortion counseling?
I feel that, what you all are doing here with the doula program is this international program. You are bringing back the art and the science of holding space with people who are having abortions. That was part of the early abortion movement in the United States that has sort of, it's, as we were saying, you and I have talked about before, abortion counseling in the American insurance system is not reimbursable, right? It's not reimbursable labor. And so my team, which is in an old-fashioned sense, still doing old school abortion counseling in the empowerment model of the Jane Collective, in the Independent Feminist Health Center Collective, that philosophy that we're grounded in. We do that, and we can't bill for that. So everything that I do, so if there is a patient who is ambivalent and comes 10 times during the pregnancy for counseling and needs us 10 times as they're working through, and obviously it doesn't look like 10 sessions of counseling, but if we're working and holding space with that ambivalence, all that is non-reimbursable labor.
Right.
So that's,
Luckily, there's so many clients that are sure in their decision.
lucky
Offset.
for all of us. Yes, good point. Touche. Yeah, and that's the thing that we always have to remember. And the folks on this, I almost said on this Zoom, but it's not a Zoom, on our Google. Yes, there we go. Know that, I mean, at least in the clinic setting, which is the one I can speak to, most people are confident, they feel supported, and they expect to cope well. But we don't need this program. What you all are doing here, what you're doing is you're teaching each other and supporting each other for the difficult cases. That's what we need support around. So current state, right? We talked about it's non-reimbursable labor, which is so interesting. Abortion counseling, like the fact that people have feelings about their abortion is a bit stigmatized in the United States.
And
I think it is
especially in the pro-choice movement, right?
Yes, that is that's a very intense aspect of our movement. I think I will say, having been to Canada and Mexico and Colombia and Peru, those are the staff that I have met and talked with. I think that it's very different there, but in the United States, we have a bit of an allergy or an allergic reaction to feelings in the setting of the abortion clinic. And a lot of them come from self-preservation, in that we have always, the pro-choice movement has always worried that if we admit that women have feelings about their abortion, that then they will take away abortion. They will make it illegal. And I always, it's like they've been making it illegal anyway, and now they have. So that didn't really work out so well. And the patients themselves still had the feelings, and they felt unheld, I would say, in a lot of their interactions in the abortion clinic setting. So that's a problem. That's something that we ourselves have created. It's a bed that we made, that this movement in Rouge, I think, is unpacking and trying to be a correction to. And so our fear of what the antis would do if they knew that patients had feelings about their abortion. That was one reason. And that, the anti-abortion people have terrorized the abortion movement. It's been a degree of domestic terrorism in the United States in different ways, shapes, and forms. And to live, that was really hard in Pennsylvania. I live in the land of milk and honey now. There's a group of protesters, that 2 or 3 or 4 organizations that have become really obsessed with our clinic, which is very bizarre. But clinics in the United States are under attack, and have been since the 1970s. And so that did come, it was, maybe it was the wrong way to take it. It went in the wrong direction, but I understand where it came from. And then just in general, as humans, we're not great at holding space for feelings. We're just not great at that.
Mm-mm.
We're not good at grief. We're not good with each other. We're not good with our own loved ones and holding space for feelings. So that's really normal and natural. And that's what we're trying to correct.
But why is it a theme within the abortion care movement that we must be more sterile and divorce ourselves from complicated emotions around abortion, or the realities of things like abortion regret?
Yeah. I think
Abortion harm women.
yes, that's what the antis say. Abortion hurt. That's what they say. I remember the different protests. The pro-lifers in San Francisco, they would just, that's what the sign. That's literally the sign. The sign says abortion hurts women. I mean, I think it's a couple things. I think that this is a harsh criticism, but complicated feelings in the abortion clinic setting, they mess up they mess up cycle times and the flow of the clinic, right? Because when you have, as you're saying, if you go from 350 to 12 independent feminist clinics, we've also gone from, I mean, Guttmacher will tell us exactly, how many clinics there were in the 80s, the 90s, and how many there are today. And it's a huge drop. So the in-clinic abortions are being done by fewer and fewer clinics, which means, and especially since Dobbs, which means if you're the one clinic that's open in your state, the number of appointments are just huge. And sure, there's going to be a number of no-shows, but the number of people you need to see in a day is huge. And so if someone's ambivalent, they are not, how do you say that? That's like, it's like throwing a stick in your spokes of your wheel of your bicycle.
So the mainstream clinics then, do you think they'd have a prevalence of just pushing those clients through their one counseling session and getting them into their abortion, just not being able to see the signs of ambivalence or really seeing what the patient needs?
So that's such a intense question. I think a couple of things happen. I think that, remember, in the American model of medicine, right, we are guided by the legal and ethical doctrine of informed consent. So informed consent must be met. And so I'm going to hold to that and just say that although I'm not in every clinic, they have to, the patient and the provider have obligations, they have requirements, right? So it's all grounded in this legal and ethical doctrine. And so that's duty. There are duties of the physician, just to use the shorthand, although non-physicians do provide abortion, but in medicine, duties of the physician and duties of the patient. And both of those individuals must participate fully and must meet those requirements of consent. So what ends up happening, I think that is common, is you've got, if you are working in the medical model, which is, are you feeling sure that abortion is the way you need to go? And if you're being asked that question, if at all, the right answer is yes. And that the energy there is that we need to move on. And so it's very effectively communicated that we just don't have time for feelings because we need to see all these people today. And so what I do hear from patients is they cried too much, so they were rescheduled. Right. So sometimes people will come to our clinic and they said that the team at the clinic I was before was uncomfortable because of my feelings. And so they said they couldn't see me. And so then they need to find another clinic. And so at my clinic, where we put no limits. I mean, but that's an extreme, right? We're not this independent woman-owned business that has to meet payroll, right? We're in a very, very, very lucky and privileged position so that we do have this, we have boundaries and we hold boundaries 100%, but we don't have to worry about rescheduling someone if they're having, they're overwhelmed by their own feelings. And so I think that it's like it's like the patients need to fit a certain mold. And if you're not fitting that mold, like if you're a square peg and the hole is round, then you're going to get kind of spit out from that, because we got to move. And I get it. Like, I get it intellectually. I don't think it's the right way, but I get it. I understand. And a part of that is the antis have done that too, in the United States in particular, by all their laws and all of their restrictions. And every year, starting, even before Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 1992, just chipping away at rights, and then barrier, imposing barrier after barrier after barrier after barrier to getting an abortion, to having a clinic, to owning a clinic, to running a clinic. So if you make it that hard to be an abortion clinic by all of your rules and all of your regulations, which you say are to help protect patients, but they're really just to run clinics out of business and keep doctors and nurses and counselors from being able to work. That's, ultimately what their goal is just to be make the barriers so great you can't even have a clinic. And so I think, I understand. So it is a survival mode for clinics in the United States, which is why what you all are doing, and the perspective of the liberty that you have to be who you are and do what you do, that is why this movement is so important, and why it is critical, and why what you all are part of really is the next evolution of abortion counseling. I truly believe that, because this is the space that you own, is the virtual space, and your model. That's why it's so powerful.
And it's something I really think has been missing in the virtual space and in the abortion pill space, because really these abortion counseling models were really privileged structures, all trained within abortion clinics. So you had to be working at one to even have access.
I'm going to go.
Made the jump with the rest of the virtual counseling. So I think this is something that we really need to bring back into these, the conversations, the structures, and this sort of model needs to be brought in a meaningful way to today's virtual abortion counselors.
Yes. And the constraints of the past are not your constraints. And so that's where you guys are all leveraging that. You're leveraging that so well, and making it it's a different world, and abortion is happening in a different way. And Lynsey, that's what you have tapped into. And this, this group is part of this. This is the modern abortion, is the abortion that's happening outside of the clinic. And this is a global movement. And this is what just connecting with you and talking with you and learning about this, the Rouge movement this is why this is really, it's the next step. It is the modern generation of both how abortion is happening and how we can support people having abortions without these, just without the constraints.
Yeah, absolutely. And really being there in the way that the client needs instead of just the way that the clinic flow will allow one to be with the client.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. Because it's not going to change. The United States, speaking, that's the only country I can speak for. I mean, just think about it. We had Dobbs in 2022. It's only getting worse. It's not
Mhm.
right now, it's not getting better, right? But self-managed abortion is the clandestine wave of the future. But it's happening, as you have enlightened me, right? It's happening without support, right? It's happening without the art and science and the sophisticated emotional support that some people really, really want and really, really need.
Right. And if abortion counselors or support people they don't have the GPS coordinates or the goalposts to be able to see different reactive behavior in individuals, they're going to miss a whole bunch of very rich contextual detail that actually is revealing what's truly going on with the client, but they miss it and think it's something else and might move on to the more physical or practical concerns.
Yeah, and I didn't, you educated me about that sort of what is happening, what's always easier for us is to lean into the medical knowledge, right? Like that's stuff that all of us on this, on this community, our Google here, we all can memorize and learn medical and nursing knowledge, right? We all
Mhm.
have that capacity. And so I can learn how many micrograms of misoprostol to take and how often to take it. I can be taught and learn and read about side effects and preparing people for this, that, and the other. But then, so that is eminently, it's teachable and learnable, and it's much simpler. And so that what you have opened my eyes to is that sort of the organizations that exist, in contrast to Rouge, like they lean completely into that medicine knowledge because it's easy to teach. There's an answer for every question. And all of those type of questions can be answered, but the holding space for emotions is it's a different can of worms.
And also
Require
for questions of the soul, and where it
correct,
starts traipsing more into these spiritual or political frameworks that
correct.
I feel like the abortion field really is uncomfortable with.
Correct. I agree. I agree. And we've lost all this time, right? As abortion, uh, the original model of abortion counseling, as that has left the clinic, and gone really, to more places like the All Options talk line, and which is, a talk line that we rely heavily on for even after abortion. It's like before,
Mhm.
during, after, but after abortion support. And there are a number of, there's a small handful of talk lines in the United States that are holding that, performing that work. Uh, that is so needed, but it's off the grid work, right? It's off the grid. It's not reimbursable labor. Um, But you know what? There are many, many things in the history of humankind have needed to be done outside of the institution and outside of the academy and outside of these sort of formalized structures. And that because it's where it can be developed. It's what you're doing, Lynsey. It's where it can be developed and created and cultivated without constraint. It allows you freedom and independent, like freedom of your own thinking. It allows you creative freedom without the constrictions and restrictions of an institution that might want to, I don't know, influence how you were talking about something. But I think what this movement is, the people that are part of this Rouge movement, I think that freedom that you have by being independent, and being on, you're at the vanguard, the beginning of something that is, it's huge, and it needs that space. It needs to be, right now as you're creating it, it needs to have that freedom so that you can make it and create it and develop it independently, and then down the road, who knows what we will
Right.
find you. Exactly.
So in one of the beginning chapters of the book, you discuss transforming the way we think about ourselves and our work. And even though this was written in the time of really brick and mortar clinics as the counseling model, I think this applies just as much today in 2025 as we're interrogating this concept for ourselves as modern day abortion doulas and what this could all look like. But these are two questions that you pose in the book, and I think they're still really relevant today. So I hope we can explore this a little bit in the context of today and abortion pills. But what do you believe is the purpose of abortion counseling? And what would be the gold standard of abortion counseling?
Oh my goodness.
And I think,
That's gonna be great. Yeah, that's going to be great to hear. I can't wait to hear what people think about that.
but these pieces might take us back to the two slides that we skipped over, the role of an
Yeah.
abortion counselor and also decision-making and counseling process.
Mhm.
Because these two pieces, I think, are still super cutting edge. For us to adopt this as the counseling framework for our abortion doula community is really still cutting edge because it's not popularized in these settings yet.
Right. Right. Yes, and this is our frame. This is our our state of mind, right? That we go about our work. Yeah, this is really the foundation. This is the footer of that goes underneath the foundation. It's even more than the foundation. It's the footer of the house. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Yeah, I do think that, 1, 2, and 3, are, really, that's the foundation, right? It's a 3-part decision assessment. And this is pre-abortion. Some of the things, though, that you all are going to work on together in this training are I think can easily pivot both pre-abortion and post-abortion with a few tweaks, right? And some of the dialogues that you're going to look at later that I wrote, I know at least one of them is post-abortion, but what you're going to see is that they're the same skills. They are the same listening skills and questioning skills that you would use in a pre-abortion decision assessment. It's just that you have to switch the temporal, your mental map has to switch in terms of this is post-abortion now. So there's no way to go back, but you're still going to be holding space with the same spirit of holding space that will be consistent.
So that's really the revolution that we're talking about here, is that of mastering the art of holding space for abortion processes.
Yeah, it is. And I would say, remember that what you are trying to, yes, you're trying to accomplish, how do I hold space? And I do that through, you're saying to yourself, I do that through my silence, my listening with my ears wide open, my asking open-ended questions, my not assuming, and being a student of the patient's beliefs, be they spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, moral beliefs. That first bullet point, accept that you do not have the answer, nor are you obligated to find it for the patient. The patient has the answer. The client has the answer. The abortion seeker has the answer. Whatever noun resonates more with you. I, am in a hospital setting, so I tend to use patient, but it doesn't matter. It's whatever identity suits the person that you're working with more. But you're not going to find the answer for them, and you're not going to fix anything. That's the true liberation moment, is like in that little mini video I have, I think called Liberation. It's a little cartoon. Is that the beauty of this is that you do not have to fix things. So if someone says, I feel like I'm killing my baby, you're not fixing it by convincing them that it's not a baby and they're not killing anything. That is the polar opposite of what you're doing. You're leaning into those statements and having them, and you're saying, say more. So instead of like your instinct is to run in fear and hide in the shed when we hear that. But instead we're moving toward that statement. We're moving toward it and saying, in the simple, just 2 words, say more. Like you're like, that is so interesting. I'm so interested in you. Say more about that. I mean, you don't have to say those preliminary things, but you're there to hold space, bear witness neutrally and non-judgmentally, so that when someone says, I feel like I'm killing my baby, or I feel like that I killed my baby, if it's after abortion, you're neutral, non-judgmental, say more about that. That in and of itself is healing, because you are demonstrating an absence of fear of that statement. You are demonstrating an absence of stigmatizing that statement. You are demonstrating that you're not afraid of that statement, and you're not going to try to change it or correct it. Similarly, with religion, when someone brings up a conflict of their religious faith or their spiritual beliefs, I want to, and I do this with all new counselors at my clinic, I want to assure you that you do not need to be an expert in the patient's faith at all. In fact, being ignorant of their faith can actually be, I think, sometimes an asset, because you don't have the temptation to fall into preaching about that faith. And so instead, like when you look at chapter 4 of my book, the mantra I use is learning. It's learning from the patient and becoming a student of the patient's religious belief. So we are never there to make pronouncements of faith. We're never there to make pronouncements about our own religious beliefs. It can be really activating for doulas when you hear someone talk about, say, a faith that you are familiar with in a way that feels really demeaning or patriarchal or restricting and rigid, and you want to give them a new way of thinking about faith. That is not our job. Our job is and see that as a gift. See that as a liberation, because then, like, only Christians could counsel Christians, and only Buddhists could counsel Buddhists, and only Muslims could counsel Muslims, and that is simply not the case. We become a student of the other person's faith and say, tell me more. In your faith, what kind of God is God? In your faith, is there a path to forgiveness? How does one
or
obtain
in their
it?
personal beliefs, because there's a wide range of thinking in Islam, as in Judaism, as in Buddhism, as in Christianity.
That's right. Good point. Good point. And so, like, in all of those things, we become a student, and we learn, and we bear witness to it, and we help. The doula is there to help the client find the answer within their own belief system, not within the doula's belief system.
Yes.
I think that's when you really grasp that, it takes a long time to really let it get into your skin. Then you're free, because you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to go study all that, and I don't have to become an expert in all that. What you want to become is an expert listener. Difference. Because how could, if you, there's almost 8 billion people on this planet. How could you, individual doula, hold the answer for each of the 8 billion? No, you don't. Each human has the answer. They will find it.
But we can hold space good enough that less ambivalent seekers or less people that are unsure are able to find their way. And we can do that at 100% for 100% of the population with enough practice.
I love your enthusiasm. I love it. It's true. We can. I really do. I think this is as we were saying, when we were talking before, this is eminently learnable. Like if you have an open heart, if you are a non-judgmental human and you have an open heart, and you just find people interesting and fascinating, and you have some groundwork as a listener, you can become like a world-class listener.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. And I think this would be a good place to close for today after this. But I really feel like good abortion counseling has the ability to stop future trauma in its tracks. With a good abortion counselor and feeling understood before or during one's abortion, I think significantly reduces the rates of trauma or emotions that are held on or just stuck within the system that aren't alchemized.
I mean, my whole life journey is based on that. I love hearing you say that because obviously it's validating for me. And I know that I think we both know anecdotally we see the truth of that, right? Because you meet your whole life, right? And the doulas on this call we all have talked to human after human after human who carries around a traumatic abortion experience, and it's about both the physical pain and the emotional pain and how they were or were not held in that space. And I don't mean, I mean metaphorically, spiritually, psychologically. And I do believe that the whole impetus, I was like, when I was younger, I was like, abortion is this place, the nexus of where all of these things that I believe in, where they all come and they fit together. And I think that we can help people work through trauma from past abortions and help prepare them to be present in a subsequent abortion. And it just, it is what I believe. This is the work that you're doing, and there's nothing more important. It's everything. It's everything to me, for sure.
Yeah. And really shifting this work more into I think what one of the goals of this group is really to shift this very holistic approach to abortion counseling more into the mainstream, or in the future, shifting the needle on what the norm is about how we provide care. And again, what the gold standard of abortion care should look like. Your question coming back from the past, from 2012, now begging us to still answer that same question, which I think is almost even more resonant today, truly.
Yeah, I agree. And this movement is critical because that is how culture shifts and changes, right? So you all are doing this. You're doing this independently, doing this work independently. You're creating a movement. You're bringing that energy out into the world, changing hearts, affecting experiences, healing people. And as this grows, I mean, everything starts somewhere, right? And it will grow and it will catch on, and then everyone's going to want to be part of it. And then it's going to just take on a life of its own. It's going to be so great.
Well, this is so exciting. I think this has been a really beautiful little introductory module to the work. And in the next videos, we'll delve through a lot of the details from the book, and also expanding upon these concepts and models for today's rapidly changing virtual environment.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks
Thanks,
for letting me
Alissa.
guide you through. It's so great. This is so awesome. So proud of everyone here.
Thank you so much. And just stay on the line. I'm going to shut off the recording. Thank you.
Sounds good.